Yes, hello, the Not the Top 20 Podcast Monday show, sponsored by Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. Oh, baby, have we got an episode for you today. Oh, baby, he's back. The prodigal son returns with a Ryder Cup and a warm glow, bordering on a tan.
Yeah, hot out there. Sitting in the sun.
Love it.
Direct sunlight in the stands. Yes, it was incredible. You didn't ask, but thank you. I was beside the 18th green when Shane Lowry held that putt.
Wow.
I was behind the 18th green for the next hour and a half. The only issue is from aside the 18th green, you can't actually see the green, which is a bit of a shame. So watch on the screens. But yeah, it was mega, an incredible weekend, and I feel like I missed quite a lot, but I was back on top of everything on the weekend. So hopefully, I'm not going to spout absolute nonsense.
And I imagine if you did feel the need to heckle any American players, you did so with a level of wit and humour becoming of yourself, your nation, your continent, and NTT20.
No heckling Americans. A lot of cheering Europeans, I would say. There was quite a lot of heckling from Americans. The ones that I personally met all did it in quite good humour, apart from one man behind the 18th on Saturday who really took exception to the fact that I was drinking a seltzer. And made a few assumptions based on that. But hard seltzer, I should say, rather than a soft one.
Is that good stuff?
I mean, I don't really know how it exists. It's basically like flavoured fizzy water that apparently is 5% alcohol.
Wow.
And I don't understand
Dangerous.
why it is. Yeah, I mean, extraordinary.
That was like the when we were at a tap house in the Bolton region, the Bolton Wigan region, and I had a
orange juice
like
thing.
an orange smoothie beer.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd never opened.
What's
Pandora's
wrong with
box.
booze that tastes like booze?
Delicious. Too delicious.
But yes, that was fun. But yeah, clearly some pretty unsavoury things going on elsewhere. I just didn't witness it. But I did tell Rory McIlroy that I loved him at least 17 times to try and make up for the abuse he was getting.
Well done. What a weekend in the EFL, in the Sky Bet Championship. On Sunday, we had Ipswich and Norwich go head-to-head at Portman Road. George, a fixture that had happened 14 times in the last 16 years without an Ipswich Town win. But in 2009, we had Alan Quinn, we had Giovanni Dos Santos, and we had John Stead. What a trio of humans to have scored in an Old Farm derby. Here we had Cedric Kipre, Jaden Philogene, and Jack Clark writing themselves into Old Farm folklore. 3-1.
Yeah, a 3-1 win that goes by the form book, I guess. The Ipswich Town form book is good at the moment in terms of having an unbeaten September, albeit there was, of course, the Blackburn game, of which has been expunged from records because it didn't complete. But they came here, not I wouldn't say in great form necessarily, but 2 home wins against Sheffield United and Pompey, against the Norwich side who are really struggling. And if there was going to be an Old Farm derby that Ipswich were going to win and win well, this really felt like it, because Norwich have struggled massively since they beat Blackburn 2-0 away from home at the end of August. September was terrible. And I think the pressure is really ramping up on Liam Manning, the manager, but also on Ben Napper, because when you look through the signings made in January, I think everyone was pretty excited to see a lot of these guys. Yet
Signings made in January.
Signings made in the summer specifically. Kovacevic in goal has looked really, really shaky at best, I would say, and had another poor game here. We've seen Medic, the centre-back, look poor at times. Harry Darling hasn't started particularly well. Kvistgaarden, who came in with a big reputation, has looked okay in flashes, but now I would say you look at the window, at the end of the window, you look at the window and think Norwich have had a really good window. Now you look at it thinking it feels like they might brought in a few duds. And the game kind of went in that vein. Ipswich taking the lead through Cedric Kipre with a really well taken goal from a set piece, just kind of slamming it in through for the net with his right foot. Schwartu scored from range, deflected effort, and then Jaden Philogene with the goal of the game and doing what he is seemingly so good at doing.
It's 5 now. And not just 5 goals, but 5, most of them with at least one dribble before the shot, and I think almost all of them from either the edge of the box or from outside the box, with left foot, with right foot. Him and Fatawu are having some competition for best wide forward in the Championship at the moment.
It's funny this, because they're both scoring incredible goals, and I think Philogene has scored some crackers this season, and the context of this goal makes it much better, and the spin at the beginning of the goal makes this goal much better. But there is an element, I think, where the aesthetic of the goal is massively helped by the fact that the Norwich keeper should do better, and he tips it onto the underside of the bar and therefore makes it look much better than it is. It's a really pure strike with Philogene weaker foot, crucially, and he deserves immense credit for that.
It's just one way you lose love for it after replays.
What should happen there is the keeper should tip it over the bar and everyone goes, "Ooh, what a hit," and then you move on. But either way, and then Jack Clark scoring late on after as was always going to be written, a brilliant ball from Marcelino Nunez through to Azon, the Ipswich striker who hit the post, and Clark finished it off. So again, a really important win for Ipswich. It feels like they are kind of putting in important performances rather than necessarily good performances. You look at the Sheffield United win, you look at the follow-up win against Pompey, you look at the way that they managed to battle back when they were second best at Ashton Gate and draw that game, and then beating their old rivals here for the first time in a long time. Like in a league where you're looking for quality, even though Ipswich have maybe struggled at times this season, haven't been as good as we thought they might be, and they currently sit kind of just above mid-table, that they're trending in a way that suggests to me that Ipswich are going to be one of the best teams in the league. With Norwich right now, where you're struggling to find teams who look really bad, I would say, in the Championship, Norwich have to be in the conversation for one of those that are, despite the obvious stars they have in their team that mean they should be much better than this.
Yeah, I mean, from a Norwich point of view, I thought 1-1 felt fair heading into half-time. I thought they had acquitted themselves relatively well.
Yeah.
And I was just starting to think to myself, I remember Manning's Bristol City. One of the things that I always felt about them was that in big games, the game plan was normally pretty spot on, particularly out of possession. They did well in cup competitions, in particular against teams from the league above. And in a weird way, that's kind of how this felt because of the different trajectories of these two clubs over the last few seasons, and now Ipswich's squad being worth, twice as much as Norwich's squad. That's flipped on its head, really, from the last 10 years or so. But then Philogene has his big moment, and then the results sort of felt inevitable after that. And for Norwich, this comes on top of 5 home defeats in a row.
Yeah.
A first derby defeat in 16 years. There's no sugarcoating it, really. It's an absolute horror show. And so far, having made a bold call to sack Torup after one season of what felt like a bit of a process hire to go with process recruitment, and a relatively bold call to sack Wagner off the back of a playoff campaign where it wasn't that controversial in the eyes of the fans, but certainly in terms of achievement. Well, I mean, if you make the playoffs but do so in a way that you don't particularly like, and then the next season you finish 13th, and then the season after that you're 19th, and you really wonder whether you were completely missing the point entirely. But they're not getting the good bits of Manning, as I say, that kind of out of possession quality. Defensively, they've been pretty shambolic, to be honest. And the football in attack is poor, which isn't a great surprise, but obviously, they're not getting the benefit of tight games and 0s and 1s, which generally lead to points. Sargent scoring 5 in 4 to start the season. It's basically the only positive that I can see right now.
Yeah.
So do you sack Liam Manning at this early stage? Do you try and ride it out for a few more weeks? That's what I'd like to see, but I dare say a lot of the fans would like to see a change. Do you sack Ben Napper if you're the owners? Because so far, his managerial hires and his transfer business aren't looking great, shall we say. Do you sack both of them? In which case, what do? You're near the relegation zone, and you remove basically the whole footballing side of the operation. Wagner took them to the playoffs and was sacked. Torup came in and was matched with an aggressively high-risk, high-reward recruitment strategy last summer. Wasn't given time, just the one season, sacked. Manning comes in, more aggressively high-risk, high-reward transfer business this summer. We will see how much time he gets given, but they're still not seeing much reward right now. And you say the summer signings don't look great. That's undeniably true. I think it might be too early to suggest that the players themselves are duds or not. I think they're just being put in a situation where there's not the right balance in the squad. Their best player is Josh Sargent, who they signed in the Premier League. Their other most consistent performers are like Jack Stacey, Kenny McLean. Matt Watts made the point on our Under the Lights episode for NTT20.com paid subscribers last week that in terms of experience of English football, they must be one of the least experienced teams in the Championship. And maybe it's too simplistic, but maybe that's a reason why they just seem to be finding it very hard to get to grips with them. I think my last point on them is, and it widens up, we bring Watford in and we bring West Brom in here early as well. That actually, since their relegation from the Premier League, they finished 13th, 6th, 13th and 19th. parachute payments give you an unbelievable advantage over the rest of the league, and Norwich have completely bungled that situation. Watford completely bungled that situation. They came down in the same season. West Brom, harsh to say bungled, but they are now without parachute payments and kind of back on the same level as anyone else and cutting their cloth accordingly. It makes me realise that one of the reasons that parachute payments have probably dominated in the last year or two is because the teams that came down that season, Watford and Norwich in particular, performed so poorly that they weren't putting up much of a fight when they should have been, and there's a lot to do.
Just a final point on Manning as well, because he's a manager that I do rate for various reasons, but Norwich hired a manager whose Oxford team were way outperforming their underlying numbers when he was hired. Whose Bristol City team last season overperformed their underlying numbers and finished in the playoffs. And this season, they're not. Like, the underlying numbers aren't particularly good. If anything, from a defensive standpoint, as per Opta, they've conceded 14 goals from 17 expected goals, or just under 17 expected goals, and they're bang on for going forward. So, like, there's a part where you're, for once they're projecting like as they should do, and this is, the variance I guess comes along now where in some aspects they're underperforming where they should be. But it shouldn't be a massive shock for a data-driven director of football that he's hired a guy whose teams in the past have maybe been running hot when they've done well, and now suddenly they're not running hot anymore. Also caveat that by also saying that it's not a huge surprise to see them struggling at home, because it's been his issue in the past where they've generally dominated possession at home, and when Manning teams dominate possession they often struggle to create chances, unlike away from home where teams come at them a bit more. And as you say, Ipswich had to, and they looked a bit more kind of in the game in the first half than maybe we would have expected, because they're a team that look good attacking transition and are proficient from set pieces. So he's a very interesting kind of case study, and my assumption and my guess is that Norwich as a football club have heavily invested into Ben Napper, and Ben Napper has heavily invested into Liam Manning, and I'd be surprised even if things continue to go poorly for the next couple of weeks. My assumption is that they will continue to retain faith in both of those, because they're two young guys who, kind of similar to their transfer policy, is a case of investing in potential rather than investing in kind of current quality. So
yeah, and just sacking until you get it right is certainly not a particularly thoughtful approach. So that's not necessarily what I'm suggesting, but you have to say that pretty much everyone top to bottom is performing poorly, and you could say has done for quite a few years now at Norwich, and it's frustrating for fans. They tasted defeat in the Old Farm Derby for the first time in 16 years. Coventry beat Sheffield Wednesday 5-0, George, at Hillsborough, against an opposition in Wednesday who, for the fifth time in 7 months, some of the player and staff wages were not paid on time. Henrik Pedersen said pre-game, we have 11 players who've not been paid, and a lot of them have played a lot in our team this season. So impact on the players, continued impact on the players and staff. The fans, of course, mobilising stronger and stronger each time as the situation gets more and more dire. We saw some fans take to the pitch to stage a very visible protest. The game was stopped for 10 minutes or so, all very peaceful, and then the game continued. Wednesday with their bare bone squad, youngsters in the main, and having played in midweek as well, a game too far, but not just a game too far from their own context, but also coming to town was a team that look absolutely sensational right now, and Coventry beaten by 5-0, continuing an absurd run of form.
Quite clearly the best team in the league right now in Coventry. Like I don't think anyone can argue with that, surely. Both in terms of results, their attacking threat, the individual players they've got. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to translate into being the team that win the league, but right now they look to me to be by far and away the most likely. Travelling away to a Sheffield Wednesday side who, as far as I'm concerned, have performed incredibly well to be 23rd in the table. So that suggests, that shows the gulf in quality between the two sides. And I do think that Sheffield Wednesday have shown on enough occasions this season already that they're not, depending on what happens with points deductions and administration and what else is going on from a purely footballing perspective, they're not necessarily one to completely lose hope on in terms of what they're able to do. But this was as dominant a performance and result as you're likely to see. Set pieces being the difference early. Bobby Thomas with a header that seemed to kind of ricochet off the defender with Thomas Asante kind of closing in has been credited to Brandon Thomas Asante, much to the ire of those of us who backed Bobby Thomas score any time. The Thomas Asante then with the goal that is absolutely his, on the edge of the box, kind of cutting onto his right foot, doing up 4 feints before firing it into the bottom left-hand corner. Bobby Thomas then had a shot that was heading in the back of the goal before Hadji Wright decided just to prod it home despite being a yard offside. Liner didn't see it and made it 3-0. And then, the key thing here is, I think with Coventry teams in the past, like good Coventry teams in the past, the Robins teams, it's been when you've kind of scratched beneath the very obvious first 13, 14 players. There's maybe been a bit of a lack of depth, especially from an attacking perspective, whereas now that's just not the case. I mean, Sims and to an extent Sakamoto were 2 of those 13, 14 players, and now they're one of 17, 18, 19 players who are part of this squad, and they both came off the bench to score in the second half. And, realistically, it could have been any score, albeit Wednesday missed a chance late on to make it 5-1 through Brown, who's one of the young kids who's performing incredibly well at Wednesday in trying circumstances. So I think from an Owls perspective, you just say we're going to have quite a lot of these days this season, I think, and it's about what we do in the games that are tight rather than what we do in the games where we're outclassed that's going to make or break the season. And obviously what's going on away from the pitch is going to be the most important thing. But yeah, for Cov, who are just scoring a stupid amount of goals, whose early goal scoring exploits looked like it was maybe a case of a purple patch, but they've now scored 27 goals this season, 12 more than Bristol City who've scored, and Ipswich who scored 15. So 12 more than any other team in the league, 15 more than the Middlesbrough who's sitting second. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. And Lampard and Edwards as a management duo, or manager and assistant manager, deserve massive credit for building what is just a relentless goal scoring, winning football machine.
Yeah, 4 clean sheets in a row as well. 27 goals in 9 championship games. Their second best start goal scoring wise to a season ever, behind only the famous 1935-36 team. And I don't think anyone needs reminding about that famous side, promoted from Division 3 South, for Frank Lampard, Reed, Harry Storer, for Hadji Wright, Clary Borton.
Borts.
Oh, big Borts. And the fixture list suggests that if this level of performance continues, some similar results could keep coming, really. Blackburn at home, Portsmouth away, Watford at home, Wrexham away, Sheffield United at home. Again, no easy games in this division, or any division ever in the world of football, as the cliche goes. But certainly bodes pretty well, doesn't it? And yeah, the team that changed the least this summer in the transfer market, they were pretty much just left alone. And I think that needs to be celebrated, because sometimes the best transfer business is very, very little. You mentioned Sims. I think Thomas Asante is having a massive impact in the last few games, and I think there'd be Cov fans who, if this summer some replacements for Thomas Asante had been signed and he dropped down the pecking order or left the club, wouldn't have probably shed any tears. You could say the same about Ella Sims, but sometimes a bit more time spent at a club, more understanding developed between players, can make them all look better. You don't have to spend the money every single time. I was calling, for example, for a premium centre-back, but Thomas and Kitching have gone, don't worry about us, we'll just get better, if that's all right with you. And they have. Portsmouth beat Middlesbrough by 1-0. The first team to beat Borough this season, and allowed Cov to leapfrog them to go top of the table. So a big week for Pompey. Their last 2 home games were a defeat to Wednesday and a draw against Watford, both because of their strong home form historically under Mousinho, kind of disappointing results, particularly throwing away a 2-1 or a 1-0 lead rather against Watford in midweek. Min Hyuk scored the winner here, similar type of strike that he scored against Watford in midweek, and is looking like a very handy stand-in for Josh Murphy, who's injured at the moment. Solbrim will want that one back. It kind of went through him. And that was the difference ultimately. 1 shot on target each, and a goalkeeper that probably would have thought that normally you'd save it. So not much between the two sides whatsoever. I went down and watched Portsmouth Watford in midweek, and I left. I didn't really think they deserved to win that game. It was a 2-2 draw. They got a late equaliser through Segicic. I didn't feel like either side really deserved to win that game. And I think watching the highlights of this game, what I've what I think I've realised is that Portsmouth are undergoing a bit of a tactical evolution this season to try and take the team to the next level, and particularly in possession. Marlon Pack dropping right between the centre-backs in build-up. You've got Connor Chaplin playing on paper in the right wing role, but he's tucking in to be a right-sided number 10. John Swift, left-sided number 10. Williams, the right-back, getting really high and holding the width and set up the Min Hyuk goal. He was the extra man at the back post to keep the ball in and deliver. Min Hyuk on the left, with Dozel in the middle of the park, and Bishop up top. And I think they had a chance in this game that Chaplin hit wide, and I think that chance is the distillation of what they're trying to achieve with this slightly more ambitious, if you like, in possession style. I think they're trying to add a new dimension to their attack, partly to take some attacking responsibility off of Colby Bishop up top, and of course being less reliant on Josh Murphy, who is out injured at the moment, and they can't always rely on him to be as excellent as he is. So just something to watch really from a Portsmouth point of view. They're a really interesting club for me at the moment in terms of, can they evolve? Can they take what was an impressive League One promotion side, a good finish in the end last season, a strong end to last season, but broadly the same core. They've been adding players, as most Championship clubs do, a lot of players from Europe, a lot of players from overseas, very few of whom have actually broken into the first team yet, and it's still the guys like Conor Ogilvie starting games. Can they get to another level while maintaining a solid foundation as they do so? I think for clubs in Portsmouth's situation, Oxford would be one as well. Any club really that comes up from League One and tries to establish himself. I think it's really difficult to do, and I'm going to keep a close eye on Pompey. Rich Hughes, the director of football, he's been on the pod before. He would have watched this game with interest, with John Mousinho in the Pompey dugout, Rob Edwards in the Borough dugout. He's only ever hired two managers, Rich Hughes, and it was Rob Edwards at Forest Green, who won League Two and was in the Premier League within a year or two, having been given his first EFL job by Rich Hughes. And then John Mousinho, given his first EFL job by Rich Hughes, somewhat lauded as a cheap appointment by some of the Pompey fan base, promoted in their first full season, and has been given a fantastic foundation for what looks like a great managerial career.
I like the idea of being lauded as a cheap appointment. That's when football fandom becomes, really intelligent, where they actually celebrate the fact that they've gone cheap and for value.
Exactly. That's when a football podcaster says the wrong word. George, for Borough, one of them really. They were never going to stay unbeaten forever. Tight game, not their best performance, not a horror show whatsoever, and they'll gather themselves rather over the international break. As part of our work with the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund this season, yes, we went to Wigan, and then for our second trip, we went up to Borough a couple of weeks ago. We spent a really interesting day, in particular with one of the great sons of Middlesbrough, Chris Cammy Kamara,
who told us that his auntie went out with Brian Clough and could have been his uncle.
Wow.
That's a scoop. Well, what a footballing dynasty that would have been. Incredible to spend the day with Cammy, someone who has, of course, been on our screens for a long time, who is an icon of football broadcasting, but also the EFL, who was a player in the EFL and an incredibly successful manager when he first took over as Bradford City manager. And spending a day with him, his incredibly infectious enthusiasm for football, for life, for the area that he grew up in as well, in Middlesbrough. So kind of wandering around the streets, seeing where he was brought up, seeing the school that he went to, where he was in the same class as Steve Gibson, who they then drifted apart over the next 15 years after they left school. They're now are very, very close friends again.
Like me and you.
Yeah. How long was our drifting?
5 years.
So one of
5
us
to 8 years.
One of us is going to be a owner and one of us a player. Exciting to see how that develops. But yeah, no, a really, really great day. And we were there to see, we were there to visit one of these incredible initiatives run by an EFL club, Trust, at this time, the Middlesbrough Football Club, Community Trust, and who are building the Southlands Community and Sports Hub.
Part of the reason for us going up there wasn't just so we could have a great day with Cammy, although we did, but was
perks of the job. For
him to show us and others around the local area, Park End, and where the Southlands Community and Sports Hub is going to be constructed, is currently under construction. This is a hell of a project in terms of ambition and in terms of what, when it's completed, it will bring to the local community that currently is really lacking. And that is opportunity to participate in sport, of course, but not only that, education, community facilities, the sorts of community spaces that we know make such a big impact to people in any locality. But we think particularly where we were, George, and in this part of Borough, is going to make a massive difference. That is what the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund is contributing towards, and we cannot wait to go back and visit when it's finished.
Yeah, it's very obvious speaking to Cammy about him growing up there, albeit a very long time ago, and speaking to Vicky, who is a kind of someone who works locally in walking football, which will be offered as one of the services by the Southampton Community and Sports Hub, that it's a tough place to grow up, and for a lot of the kids there, a lot of the adults there, and everything in between, there aren't very many opportunities for exercise or for the many initiatives that they'll offer, including even kind of employee mentoring as well. So, seeing the building work being done, being able to visualize what the football pitches will look like and where the office is going to be, it just feels like the kind of facility that's going to change lives, basically. And what better way for Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund to impact those who are associated with EFL clubs than change their lives. And I think this will definitely do that.
Absolutely spot on. We'll keep you guys updated with the project. And of course, we're heading out a number of times over the next few months to EFL clubs and their community or charity arms. And we're just really enjoying the travel, the trips, meeting people, and also telling you guys all about it. George, why don't you tell me a little bit about Leicester's 3-1 win at Swansea? Let's not sniff at this at the end of a 2-game week, a win at a pretty stubborn Swan side. I note that the Sky Sports highlights on YouTube, the title was Fatawu Screamer as Foxes return to winning ways, and I feel like I've seen that exact title 3 or 4 times already this season.
There was something, you did an okay podcast in my absence. Oh, actually 3. And
4.
But I was on the Monday one. With 4 esteemed guests. It was
like MasterChef, that's me and you, and then MasterChef The Professionals. Got the professionals on in your absence.
Yeah, and Goffey.
He's a professional punter.
Yeah, that's true. Fair enough. So in Jed's one, he was talking about Leicester, and his words were ringing in my ears, where he was like, they may not seem great, but they have the individual quality just to bring themselves through. I'm paraphrasing him in games. And you see Jordan James get on the ball and score a beautiful goal for the first. You see Jordan James get on the ball again, beat 2 players and strike the woodwork. Shortly after that, you see Abdul Fatawu get on the ball and score an absolute screamer. You see him get on the ball 3 minutes later from the halfway line and hit a ridiculous shot that cannons off the crossbar. Between both boxes, and in Leicester's case, they didn't really even kind of get into Swansea's box that often.
Yeah.
There wasn't much between these two teams, but Leicester do have, and this is, when I was bullish on the 1-24s have aged okay after the first week or so, where Birmingham obviously we weren't particularly positive on and they started really strong. Leicester we were quite bullish on and didn't start that well, but it's kind of righting itself now, where with Leicester it was a case where it's like their squad is just absurdly good, and we're now seeing the fruits of that. And in Martí Cifuentes, they've got a manager who I don't think is a tactical genius or anything like that, and I don't think we're going to see Leicester's success be down to his it's not going to be like it was with Maresca, where you look at the manager as being kind of the main character or the main role. It's going to be this: how do you get this group of players to be a functioning football team? And he's kind of doing that at the moment to a degree. I think.
Are you happy to accept the fact that their underlying numbers are pretty poor?
Yeah, but that's kind of what I mean.
So I would have thought that, based on your perception of football, that the idea that you could be like basically a bottom 8 team on the numbers but just have Fatawu, you wouldn't necessarily see that as sustainable.
Yes and no.
Like, is Jordan James and Fatawu going to score another, basically a goal a game from outside the box?
Probably not. But at the same time, will this group of players continue to post bottom 8 numbers? It's only like 8 games. Probably not. We've seen teams be successful in the Championship, because I think the Championship's a weird league where you do have basically like elite players, particularly at getting on the ball in wide areas and cutting inside and shooting, which in itself it probably isn't translatable to a higher level, but in this level they're able to do it consistently. Like Burnley were still, their numbers were obviously okay, but their success came in part thanks to Manuel Benson doing this consistently. So I think they'll probably fall away a little bit. I do think they seem to be improving. I do think that in James they have brought in a player who is exceptional and a very smart bit of business to do that, and I think he'll be a huge player for them this season. And I'm not, he's a player that I kind of fell in love with a bit when we did 21 under 21 research a couple of years ago before his move to France. And maybe the perception of him away from Birmingham City, I'm not sure everyone had kind of cottoned on to how good he is, and he's starting to show it now. Defensively, it's definitely a worry. Like, they're not as solid at the back as I thought they would. Stolarczyk made a really good save from Vipotnik here at 1-0, which would have been interesting had that not gone in.
Yeah, fifth worst XG against.
But then again, like if Marty is going to have any big input between now and say January, February, I'm sure it'll be changing that, because we've seen him take a group of much worse players and formulate a very solid defensive team. So yeah, TBC, I wouldn't be confident now of putting them up for a second, third, fourth place finish necessarily, but I do think there are signs that their individual quality and certain players coming into the side, and I guess the manager maybe working with the team is seeing them improve.
So you wouldn't see them at the moment as a third, fourth place team?
No, I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't like bet on it. I wouldn't say I think this is what's going to happen. It also wouldn't surprise me massively. Again, we don't know what's happening with points deductions. Kieran Maguire contributed to a piece on NTT20.com recently where he seemed to suggest it was still relatively likely, could possibly even be 2 deductions, depending on when the second charge comes, if a second charge comes. So we'll have to see on that. But in terms of if you ignore deductions, I'd be surprised if they weren't there or thereabouts. But because of the bad numbers, you've got to acknowledge that there is a chance they go on a very poor run if that doesn't improve.
Indeed. Preston beat Charlton by 2-0. Preston 4th in the Championship. As we head into the second international break, what a position to be in. And there'll be a part of them that feels like they should be level on points with Borough, because in midweek they were 2-0 up against Hull and threw it away. They got Ollie McBurneyed, not the only team this season, in fairness, but only a point where 3 looked on the agenda. But they bounced back here, 2-0 against Charlton. The first goal scored gleefully by Thierry Small.
Ooh. That is... What's the opposite of a muted celebration? An amplified celebration.
Yes.
Loved it.
Yeah, because he'd been booed by the Charlton fans who didn't like the fact that he joined Preston instead of staying and giving the Championship a go with Charlton. They feel like, and I know Nathan Jones certainly feels like, the platform that they gave Thierry Small allowed him to show off his talents and gave him a really good opportunity in senior football that he'd been looking for quite a while. And so, understandably, from their point of view, seeing him move on a free to Preston, not great. Some pantomime boos, goal scored, and a great celebration.
Also, the fact that the two things. Obviously, he was great at Charlton last season, and Charlton fans rated him. But the two things you could say about him were needs better end product, and he's unbelievably one-footed, and then he scores with his right foot, and you're like. Albeit very much with the help of a deflection. Yeah, so 2-0, the final score. PNE, fourth in the league. What's that all about? Let me tell you. They've only conceded 7 in 9 games. That's going to get you to where you want to be. If they can stay at that level, they will be in great shape. Why are they so good defensively? Well, I think a fantastic goalkeeper signing of Daniel Everson. We've mentioned him a few times, making sensational saves to win them points or win them matches, but also a bit less flashy, but I think still important, particularly to start the season. Consistency at the back in terms of their back three, your Stories, your Hugheses, your Gibsons, your Lindsays, all the same dudes that have been playing at the back for quite a while and looking like they know each other's games front to back. In the centre of the park, your Whitemans, your McCanns. Again, you've got that partnership already. And I think in the spine of the team, in order to have a decent floor and keep the opposition at bay, that's a good thing for them. But also, a sprinkling of loan quality added in the summer, all of whom have contributed at different times in different games in a positive way. Dobbin and Devine in particular. Armstrong started in this game as well and looked pretty good at Derby last season. All of these guys have had experience of the league before, so they're not first-time loans. They're not caught cold by it.
I think just some intelligent stuff was done over the summer, and some of it was keeping what they already had and backing that to get better over time, and some of it was what they added. Freshness in Thierry Small and Odell Fire on frees, young, early 20s guys. And what are the potential issues going to be? Well, they haven't got great depth up top. Osmajic, we still don't know what's happening with his FA hearing, but there is obviously the chance he gets banned. And he's been out of the team in the last few games anyway. Jefferson played and scored here, showed good pace to get on the end of a square ball for an easy finish, but obviously doesn't have that track record. And Michael Smith, great target man. You probably at this stage in his career want him to be paired with an Osmajic or a Jefferson to bring out the best in them, and that's not always how Hecky wants to play, because he likes the sort of two number 10 types at the moment. But yeah, you look at the squad, unused subs here: Osmajic, Frokje Jensen, Thordarson, all guys that last season you'd have considered proper first teamers, and now being used, well, not used, unused in a 2-0 win at home to Charlton. So for me, it's just really nice looking PNE side at the moment with a very appropriate playing style, tough to play against, direct and play with speed and aggression, but mainly they're trying to be solid as well. They've got a very calm and experienced manager in Paul Heckingbottom, and I just wonder if both the club and Hecky might feel a bit like at this level they're a bit underrated and a bit overlooked. And I wonder if that's a bit of a motivating factor, because I can imagine it's quite a powerful one.
Ali, you a bit concerned about the underlying numbers?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't expect them to finish fourth.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think they've started the season incredibly well. They feel to me like it feels like this time of the season every year, there's a couple of cases where you just need to say to a fan base, just steady. Like, don't get carried away. If you're suddenly 10th at the end of November, it's not like what's going on, what's happened. It's been an incredibly fast start and a very good start, and as you say, the options they've got now, especially up front, it's been a long time since Preston have had options from an attacking perspective. So yeah, really strong start, a really good performance, and I think one of their best performances. Their home form has been good, the results have been good, but this was one where they took on a Charlton side who've been in good form and were by far the better team. So no, positive.
Right, George, Hull City 1, Sheffield United 0, Blades' 8th defeat in 9 games. Hull jubilant.
Yeah, funny one this, because it's a brilliant win for Hull, and the clean sheet will mean a lot to them and their fans. But Hull this season have been a side that, even when they've been not at their best, have been really good from an attacking standpoint. Yeah, the goal here from David was well taken. It was one of 5 shots they had in the game, and even though Sheffield United carried a bit of a threat themselves, they missed a penalty through Harrison Burrows, a kind of bit of a nothing penalty that I guess I'm a bit surprised that the player foul Danny Ings didn't take. A definite penalty. They should have had a penalty earlier in that second half as well, with a clear Campbell. The tackle was made, and I think Hughes just stood on his foot once the ball had gone, and it looked like a pretty clear-cut penalty. But again, right on the edge of the box, maybe the referee would have had difficulty giving it. Harmer hit the post. It was, I would say, in many respects, quite a good performance from Sheffield United after a midweek where they put in quite a good performance against Southampton and felt like things went against them in terms of refereeing decisions. Under Ruben Sayes, the performances were pretty poor, and we said that it felt like it was ripe for a bit of a new manager bounce because their luck would turn. And from where I'm seeing now, it's just a case where their luck hasn't really turned as of yet. I'm still not particularly concerned about them I know a lot of talk about them being relegation candidates and the like, and they are rooted to the bottom of the league just without winning against Oxford, all they have to show for their season so far. I don't think so. I think they're playing better than that, and I think they're based on the receiving end at the moment of quite a lot of pretty tight games, and I think they'll improve. For Hull, it's a win. When you play at home and you win in front of your fans and you have things that go your way in your own box, it's going to feel great. I wouldn't say, I think Hull have played better than this and not won games this season already. But they took their chance when they got it, and they defended for their lives. So fair play to them. Just fair play to them. No but. QPR into the top 6. Can you believe it? They beat Bristol City by 2-1 at Ashton Gate. Bristol City went ahead. Borges doing incredibly well to keep the ball in, hooking it across
to Emil Rees, who headed home nicely. Scott Twine would have felt he could have done better with an early chance. McCrory in the second half would have felt like he could have done better with a chance when well placed.
Better with a cross for the goal.
Better with a cross.
It was his awful cross that was then the Borge then put back in.
The second assist, as I like to call it. And then things just started to turn because King Kone powered one in to get QPR level. And then Paul Smith scored a header. That can't be right, can it? Paul Smith scoring a header.
One of a couple of very good fouls, that.
Do you think?
Great foul. Yeah, I mean, it's a proper push in the back, but
right.
He does it early enough. I think ref's probably not looking.
Is it unfair, therefore, for me to mention that that's not the first time this season I've been disappointed with McCrory's backstick defending? The goal against Derby a few weeks back springs to mind, where what's Ward's first name? Little Ward who likes to hit. Joe Ward climbed above him as well on that front.
I do think there's probably an element where people are like, it's Paul Smith. You can't be fouled by Paul Smith. Like, he's like 5'2", but it's but if someone puts their hands in your back and pushes you and you're about to jump, you're probably going to move.
Yeah, disappointing for Bristol City to lose this one from having the lead. Zach Viner playing in central midfield doesn't feel ideal. A couple of absences, Jason Knight in particular. QPR just getting on the right side of it, and that means this QPR side that conceded 10 goals in their first 3 games and got 1 point in that time, since that 7-1 defeat to Cov, 14 points from 6, 4 goals conceded, 2 clean sheets, and 4 where they've just conceded the 1. Top end of the pitch is looking better as well. Another team that, like many of the ones that we're talking about in the top 6, are hugely overperforming underlying numbers, and that's, at the moment in the Championship there is such a big wodge of broadly similar teams who are playing out very close matches, many of which are ending in draws. I think that's where league position right now. Just chill on that. Let's see how we go. Millwall 3, West Brom 0. They say a healthy diet in food terms is just sort of protein, carbs, vegetables, right? And in football, it's set pieces, screamers and counterattacks.
Yeah, Femi Aziz basically stealing the show for the first and second goal. A really good cross for Cooper for the first, and then an absolutely brilliant screamer, as you say, for the second. Really good work down the left-hand side for the third that was converted by Sturge, who started the season incredibly well. Yeah, I mean, this was a game where West Brom have been so solid for much of the season, and the XG for Millwall was 0.77 for their 3 goals. So I think if you're a Baggies fan, it's important not to get too carried away. It's just a game where Millwall really took their chances in a way that West Brom weren't really able to fashion that many at meaningful times, but also didn't take them when they came. So a big win for Millwall, and it's kind of been a quietly good start to the season for them. They're up in 8th now, at a time where I think we can start looking at the league table. With 14 points from 9 games, and plenty to like.
Needed that home win. Really poor at home results wise so far this season. Millwall, Watford 2, Oxford 1. George, what happened here?
What?
And Gakia happened.
Yeah, a kind of crazy game. Oxford went ahead through a Watford player in a lane who kind of shanked across the near post into his own goal, and then Watford was just kind of wave after wave of attack after that. But I don't think anyone thought that it was going to be Jeremy Ngakia who would score an injury time brace. The first, I kind of feel sorry for Jamie Cumming, for both of them really. The first was a really good save that he made low to his left, but just couldn't scramble the ball away. And when he eventually did, he could only kind of parry it onto the head of Ngakia, who nodded it over the line. And then it was obviously a wet and windy Saturday across the country. And again, I think just a very good foul where Cumming is kind of held as the cross is delivered, and then let go of, and then kind of nudged in the back as he goes to try and claim it, and the ball comes off his palm and nearly kind of nettles. It doesn't even nestle in the back of the net. It hits the inside of the post. And it's given by goal line technology. Again, as an Oxford fan, I'm not complaining. Those fouls are never given. I think if you're a fan, you probably want your team to be quite good at doing them, and they profited from that. Second half, Cumming made plenty of saves. Oxford had a few chances through Plaheta, in particular, who had the best of those and weren't able to take them. So, I think Watford, good value for their lead, possibly should have put the game to bed sooner because Oxford had chances late on to get a point. But it's been a good, albeit they weren't able to hold on against Pompey in midweek. It's been a good week for Paolo Pezzolano as he tries to save his job, albeit
it seems to just be assumed that he's going to be sacked at some point.
Yeah, it's Watford.
It's
Watford. Whereas I think as an Oxford fan, quite annoyed or a bit frustrated with 1 point away from home against QPR and Watford over the course of a week, with the performances after that very good win against Bristol City in the 3 games against Blades, QPR and Watford not necessarily living up to what we'd hoped would continue to be a good run of form.
The Championship incredibly drawy at the moment. El Arbitro, Hugh Davis giving us some stats: 35 home wins, 35 away wins, 37 draws so far this season. We had 3 1-all draws in the Champ this weekend. Wrexham won, Birmingham won, set-piece goal, Cleworth heading it on to Dobson to put Wrexham ahead. Beadle had come in for Allsop, dropped after a few mistakes, made a big save at 1-0 to keep it that way. And then after half-time, second half begins, and within 30 seconds, Birmingham are level. Energy from Damari Gray, who is providing plenty of that at the moment for Birmingham. Stansfield threading it through to Patrick Roberts to finish, and Blues getting a point from behind there. Derby won, Southampton won. Adam Armstrong scoring again for Saints, his 3rd in 4, and that's with a missed penalty in the game in which he didn't score. But Adjimang with some leap to score a brilliant headed goal for Derby to rescue a point. It was another game in which Ross Stewart looked really good, but sadly a game in which Ross Stewart got injured just as quickly as he's been back and looking excellent. He's out again, and I thought what was quite notable and a bit of a red flag is that with Damian Downs and Cameron Archer on the bench, Ross Stewart getting injured, we'll still turn to Tom Fellows, which just suggests that at the moment I really don't think he has landed on the correct style and or personnel, whichever way round you think you need to start with that is working. And Southampton continue to look pretty poor, to be quite honest with you. Blackburn won, Stoke won to finish us off. Million Manhoof looking dangerous here and did put Stoke ahead, but that just spurred Blackburn into life. I think a defeat would have been pretty damaging here for Rovers, and so I'm impressed with their response. In the end, the equaliser from Cargbo could have nicked a win as well with some better finishing towards the end. 1 win in 6 for Stoke. That strong start to the season just dried up a little bit. The attack in particular doesn't look quite as consistently dangerous, albeit in Manhoof and Sorba Thomas you have got guys who can create something out of nothing. But Mabama's been pretty quiet in the last few weeks, and no home wins for Rovers yet this season. This would have been their 4th defeat at home. Of course, that doesn't include the one that they almost won against Ipswich, which has now been expunged from the soggy records. So an important goal for them to come back and equalise. International break next. Championship returns in 2 weeks.